Hello wellness seekers, and welcome back for another video. In today's video we're going to be chatting about what to look out for. What are some of the things that you have to look out for if you are wearing a face covering or a face mask for prolonged periods of time? So without further ado, why don't we just dive right into it? Hey guys, what's happening? It's Meshi with Path to Wellness, the clinic. So in this video we're going to be talking about some of the things that I'm hoping that you will consider when it comes to your health and your wellness journey, essentially, of what you can do on your own time if you are having to wear a facial mask for prolonged periods of time. So let's just dive right into this. So first and foremost, well, first of all, welcome to this video, guys. I hope you're having a fantastic day. So if you haven't seen the news just yet, I'll just pop it here from Twitter. This is from the 570 News. They have just officially announced that in many of the cities in Ontario, it has become mandatory to wear a facial mask whenever you're out in public in large indoor areas. So therefore, I wanted to, as a clinic provider and as a clinician, I felt that it was one of my duties to really provide you with some information and some tangible things that you can use when you're not on my treatment table and you're not in large groups of not around large groups of people, so that your lungs can actually keep up. And what are some of the things that you can do so that it doesn't actually affect your health in a negative way? Okay, first of all, if you are brand new to this channel, thank you so much for taking the time to join me in this video. If you do enjoy videos such as this one, where we're talking about health and wellness and how we can feel more empowered every single day, consider subscribing, and you can also hit the notification bell, and then that way you get notified every single time that we release a new video. All right, so talking about the face mask and talking about what can we do and what do you need to consider when you have to wear. Sometimes you might be in a situation where you cannot avoid not having to wear a mask. That's just inevitable. You might be in an area where you're required by your job, or you're simply just cannot socially distance, and at that point, what are some of the considerations that you need to take into place? So first and foremost, if your mask is wet, it's no longer effective. So let's do this again. If your mask becomes wet because you're sweating or because you're splashing water on it or what have you, it's no longer going to be as an effective tool as if it was dry and clean. So obviously make sure that if you're going to be doing activities where you are going to be sweating profusely, perhaps try not to wear a mask, but if you do have to, then just make sure that you have a change of masks with you, because you will likely need to change them frequently. Okay, moving on. I wanted to point out that when you are wearing a cloth mask and you are around people that have or may have been infected with COVID, just keep in mind that a cloth mask will actually not going to filter for any of the viruses and the bacteria that we're essentially trying to prevent you from. So a cloth face mask will help you to not spread any of the bacteria or any of the droplets that are coming out of your nostrils or through your mouth as you're speaking or as you may be coughing or sneezing, that sort of thing. So that's what it's effective for, that it kind of stops that. But as far as bacteria and viruses and fungi and things like that, it's not going to be preventable, obviously. So I just wanted to kind of remind you of that. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you have to wear a mask on a regular basis because your job requires it, or you're just simply around a large group of people on a regular basis, make sure that you do some version of breath work to be able to offset, so your lungs can actually bounce back a little bit easier. When you're wearing masks for prolonged periods of time, it has been shown that it may reduce your lung capacity for it to intake oxygen by up to 20%. This may change, and honestly, don't quote me on this statistic, only because it will vary from person person to person. Each of our lungs and each of our anatomy is quite unique, and each of our health concerns are quite unique. So someone who is a teenage athlete may have a completely different level of lung capacity than someone who is in their 50s and it hasn't really worked out for like 5 years. So just keep that in mind as well, that healthcare, it has to be individualized because we each have our own kind of quirks and our own history of not only injuries but also our own health concerns, and our bodies adapt to the same conditions completely differently. However, I do believe that when you're placing stress on the body, you can offset that as well, but you can't just place stress on the body and you're asking your body to constantly filter and absorb the stress that you're placing on there. So I think that a lot of the times this is sort of when things get confused a little bit, because we're thinking in absolutes, like we're either wearing a mask or we're not wearing a mask, we're either exercising or we're never exercising, and reality kind of falls somewhere in between those two spaces, where you may be wearing a mask but you don't have to wear it for that long, and then therefore when you're exercising or when you're doing some type of breath work, then it kind of evens out. Or you might be wearing a mask for about, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours a day, which is a really long time, by the way, for you to be wearing a mask. But you might be wearing it for that long, but then you're not really exercising and you're not really placing tension on your body for it to build up some endurance. That's when you're going to start running into, over time, into some trouble, because your body's not going to be able to maintain the new level of stress that you're placing the body under. So therefore, stress, offset, stress, offset. So what I mean by that is there's numerous things that you can do, and in my next video I'm actually going to link it into the cards and also into the description box as well, that I will be sharing with you guys 2 different forms of breath work that you can do today, and you can practice this on a regular basis so that it teaches essentially your body how to breathe with your full lung, with activating your diaphragm fully. And the more you practice this, the easier it becomes, and it will also help you when it comes to any type of like if you're finding that emotionally you're getting a little bit overwhelmed as well, it will help with that as well. Okay, next thing that I wanted to mention is that especially when you're wearing masks for prolonged periods of time, or we're just simply in summertime, hydration is going to be key. Hydration is absolutely going to be key, not just because I want to harp on you for like hydrating and drinking more water, but because whenever you're wearing a facial covering of any kind, you might find that you're going to be sweating more than usual. It definitely keeps you warmer, and therefore you will actually need to hydrate more, because you sweat more, you lose a lot more electrolyte, you lose a lot more sodium from your body. So to make sure that your cells are able to function more appropriately, you absolutely want to increase your hydration as much as possible. A good rule of thumb, and really it's a generalized rule of thumb, so please don't quote me on it. Obviously if you're active, it's going to go up. Obviously if your health is compromised, it's going to slightly go down a little bit. But a good generalized rule of thumb when it comes to hydration is that you take your body weight in pounds divided by 2, and that number that you got at the end, that will be how much you should consume in liquid or in water per day in ounces. So if you, for easy math's sake, if you're 140 pounds, then you divide it by 2, then that's 70 ounces a day in liquid. Keep in mind, when it comes to hydration, you want to add an extra cup on top of that if you are active or if you are drinking coffee. Because whenever you drink coffee, whenever you drink any type of caffeinated beverage, or like if you have tea or you have black tea, that also is a diuretic, so it will be dehydrating. So just add an extra cup of water on top of that, and then you should be fine. It's kind of a transition, especially if you haven't been hydrating appropriately. Then when you start drinking the appropriate amount of water, then you're going to pee all the time, it will feel like. But then the good news is also that your body will start sending you signals that you're thirsty much faster. Moving on. Okay, so I wanted to briefly touch on hydration, but I also wanted to add supplementation as well. Supplementation is always important, especially I like to think of supplementation as sort of like that extra kick, or like sort of like that buffer barrier that you can kind of build to help you boost your immunity. That's how I kind of like to think of any type of supplementation program. It does take a couple of months for your supplements to start kicking in if you're taking them regularly, but I would highly, highly, highly focus on a combination of food as well as supplementation, and I would put a larger focus on antioxidants. So your vitamin A, your vitamin C, your vitamin E. Add in some vitamin D, even though right now it's summertime, and during the summer months most of us are outside in the sunshine a little bit longer. I still like the idea of boosting your vitamin D levels to about 5,000, between 5 to 10,000 IUs to be on the safe side. It's like a nice healthy level. And then on top of that, at that point, you can also play with a little bit of B complex or vitamin Bs, depending on how your energy levels are going. Best case scenario, honestly, is that you can go and see a professional. You can see a naturopath, or you can see a nutritionist. Let them do some testing, and you can kind of see sort of where you might be deficient. You can also talk to your doctor, and they can do a blood test. They might not be able to really fully tell you which vitamins you might be deficient in, but a good multi is a great start. High levels of C, high levels of A and D and E. So your base antioxidants, if you've got a good base, you already know that you're moving towards alkalizing your blood a little bit more, which builds your immunity anyway. So that's all I wanted to tell you about supplementation. Moving on, and this is my last point, and this is probably the one that's like the closest to my heart, is pay attention to when you are wearing a face mask and you're highly irritated by it. It just makes you really mad. It's a really triggering topic for you. Pay attention to your frequency. So I don't talk too much about what's happening on an energetic level. I think it absolutely needs to be addressed, because we have full control over how we actually manage our own energy centers and how that actually affects our health and our immunity. So here's what I mean. If you are wearing a face mask and you're around people that are also highly negative, those two things, if wearing a mask is very, very triggering for you, plus you're around people that are also draining your energy off, so to say, you will find that by the end of the day, you're going to be a lot more tired than if you had to wear a mask and you're around people that actually are very supportive and kind and encouraging, and they give you new ideas and whatever. So just pay attention to the energies that you're allowing to suck your energy off. So the way that I kind of like to think of energies is, you're an energy center, and when you're around people that they don't have proper boundaries, or they constantly talk about negative things, they talk to you about the news, they talk to you about everything's doom and gloom, I kind of like to think of them as they are kind of like walking around with a plug in their hands, and then once they plug into you, then they can start draining off that precious life force from you. On top of that, you're putting a face mask on that is already triggering for you, then your brain will go into complete overdrive, because then there's two stimulants that is triggering. Anger is triggering low frequency emotions. You have full control over that, and you can either focus on the fact that you have to wear a mask, or you can focus on the fact that it's a temporary thing and just move on to the next thing. You always have full choice of what you focus on. It's up to you where you place your energy, because if this is, you can either fight it, or you can accept it, and you can make the absolute best of it. Unfortunately, this is where we are today. None of us really wanted to sign up for having to wear a mask for full time anyway. So just know that right now, this is just a temporary phase, and we're moving through it. in as saveable way as possible, but you absolutely have a choice of how you behave with the mask on, how you behave around other people, how judgmental you get around other people. Those are all your actions and your reactions. So just make sure that you pay attention to that, because those very things can actually deplete your own immunity. So when we're talking about wearing a face mask, that in itself can be highly controversial and very triggering. Don't add extra things on top of it that can also just drain off your own precious life force. So we can talk about energies and how we can manage and maintain a higher frequency energy level at all times, so then you don't get so swayed so quickly. And I think that I will be doing a new series on that topic, so if you're interested, definitely let me know in the comments below, because I would love to create that for you. But for now, I just kind of wanted to touch briefly on that, because I think that it's very unspoken about, and the more we can kind of manage our own energies and our own frequencies, the easier it gets for all of us, really. So this is all I wanted to share with you guys. I hope you have found this helpful and useful. If you did, you already know what to do. You can give me a thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel, so that way you get updated every single time that me and my team will release a new video here. And of course, if you wanted to see us and you're in a KW area, I will leave a link down in the description so that you can book your next treatment with us in the wellness clinic. Okay, that's all I have for you today. I hope you have yourself a fantastic day, and I will see you guys again in my next one. Bye.